Good afternoon, everyone. AFECA welcomes you to the Asian Trade Show Industry Reboot, Learnings and Good Practices. I will be your moderator this afternoon. I am Marisa Naliana. But first of all, I would like to say that today is a very special day as it is Global Exhibitions Day. Global Exhibitions Day recognizes the important role that trade exhibitions play in driving economies throughout the world. Now, which makes it a perfect occasion for us to share and to learn from some of the reopened markets so that together we build a stronger trade show community post-pandemic. The COVID-19 pandemic has put the international trade show industry to a standstill in 2020. Companies downsizing, human resources issues, business losses, future of fairs and exhibitions in question, the challenges of industry transition from physical to virtual. These are only a few of the questions in our minds. As we gradually come out of the pandemic, learnings and experiences from our global partners who have reopened are very valuable. And we have them this afternoon with us. We have invited leaders from the industry, from China, Japan, Singapore, to share with us their fears when confronted face-to-face with COVID-19. The trip to recovery moving forward and how they see the future of the exhibition industry will be. We have prepared a short video for everyone. For those who have prepared reboot from our global counterparts. Let us all watch this. You have seen what some of our counterparts in Asia are doing, and you will know more this afternoon as we move along. And to formally open our program, I am very privileged to introduce to you the President of the Asian Federation of Convention and Exhibition Associations, also known as AFECA. Please welcome President Vincent Lim.
Good evening, and thank you, Melissa, for the introduction. A warm welcome to my fellow AFECA board members, associates, and friends, and also to our three distinguished speakers, Mr. Michael Krug from China, Yasushi Kachiwara-san from Japan, and Mr. Albert Liu from Singapore. Thank you for being with us, and who will be sharing with us their learning and best industry practices for within their country. I understand that today's webinar has garnered 236 registrants from 24 countries. So I think this is a very positive and very encouraging numbers. And so say hello to all our friends from near and far. Ladies and gentlemen, the global pandemic has lasted longer than we thought. So judging from the current situation that we are in, we have to be even more prepared for the days ahead of us. The opening of the industry is still very uncertain for now, with lockdowns having to be implemented, and it is difficult to plan show for organizers and venue owner. That's why for that very purpose, our speakers will share their experience in organizing their respective show or exhibition during these uncertain times. Our AFECA webinar today is also a special one to mark GED 2021. Happy Global Exhibition Day to all. And I also would like to emphasize that exhibitions will continue to play an important role to discuss and share on the Tradeshow Industry Reboot. Exhibition will continue to play an instrumental role across the group to rebuild economies, and it is drive national economic prosperity through building businesses and unifying industry. Together with our speakers, I wish that everyone can take home valuable lessons and be prepared for the future ahead once our MICE or exhibition industry in the market open. I would also like to share our recent AFECA survey on MICE, ASEAN MICE Industry 2020, that a majority of our industry players across Asia indicated that the exhibition industry are still positive, and the expected recovery will be by Q4 of this 2021. So do keep our finger crossed, and we hope and prepare ourselves for next year, and hope we can meet face to face again and to organize exhibitions and events in the new norm after the pandemic. So before I end my speech, I would like to thank Wendy Lai, the organizing committee chairperson of this webinar, and also is our AFECA Honorary Secretariat. Our thanks also go to AFECA Secretariat and also the AFECA board for making this webinar a successful one. Thank you once again, and I hand back to you, Melissa, for the rest of this webinar. Stay safe and stay healthy, and I hope to meet you all face to face very soon. And finally, happy Global Exhibition Day 2021. Once again, thank you.
Thank you very much for that very positive outlook on Asian exhibitions, Dato Vincent Lim. Thank you for sharing your ideas to the group as well. Now, we have invited very interesting personalities this afternoon. Everybody's in the trade show industry, and they come from various parts in Asia. For this episode on Trade Show Industry Reboot, experiences, learnings, and good practices, we have industry leaders from China, Japan, and Singapore to share their stories. This will not be a lecture from these speakers. This will be storytelling. They will share these stories about experiences on COVID-19, lockdowns, quarantine, development of protocols, and moving forward. Now, one of the key cities in China is Shanghai. The pandemic is a big blow to the industries in the city, exhibitions included. Now, our first speaker, Mr. Michael Kroppi, is the General Manager of Shanghai New International Expo Center Company Limited. As we know, China was one of the first, if not the first, to open its economy, its trade and commerce in the region. Mark is a board member of the Global Exhibition Association, UFI. UFI is Union de Foire Internationale, board member of the German Center of Commerce and Trade Shanghai, vice chair of the Chinese Venue Association. So anything about the Chinese venue, you go to Michael Kroppi. And Michael was recipient of the 2017 Shanghai Magnolia Award and the 2018 Person of the Year in Exhibition Industry. Michael is an exhibition expert. Also, I'd like to share with you this very interesting part of Michael, his fun side. and I am very sure only a few of you know this. Michael was a professional soccer player, would you believe? A soccer player in Hamburg, Germany in 1984. He is also a composer and a musician. Do you know that he formed a band in Shanghai called Shanghai Voltage? He also composed a song for UFI in one of the UFI congresses entitled Face to Face. And to share with us life during and after the pandemic, from the perspective of SNIEC, friends, please welcome our exhibition man by day, and he is a rock star by night, the Michael Croquis. Michael, please.
Yeah, thank you, Marisa, for the flowers, and Vincent, Marisa, and Wendy, thanks very much for organizing that. Before I start the presentation, just to say Happy GED Day, as we said already and heard before, and it's really a big pleasure. I recently joined the board of AFECA, so it's my first official speech here. And before I start my presentation, just a quick question, or how to say, I ask you for a favor, Marisa. Usually when I speak live here in China on some conferences or forums, and the people know that I wrote a song called Face to Face, they always ask me to sing it live. So I hope you will not ask me to sing it live, because we are on a webinar and not face to face, but one day we will be face to face.
Now that you told me, Mike, I think we will request you later on to sing face to face.
Maybe later. So let's focus on the topic. So before, or 2-3 weeks ago, when I was preparing my speech and my presentation, the topic, as you know, is life during and after the pandemic. 2 weeks ago, basically China was really corona-free. As you may have heard in the last couple of days, unfortunately, in 2 areas in Guangzhou, so South China, close to Hong Kong, Guangzhou and Shenzhen, and Anhui province, unfortunately, there are some new cases. Not many. You may have known from other areas like Qingdao, a city with 10 million people, that if something happened in the number of even single-digit 5, 6, 7, 8 new cases, the government was very consequently testing the whole city, basically locking the city or controlling, do not allow people to travel in and out without strict control. And that is happening right now in South China and Guangdong province. So I suggest let us start the presentation. First slide, please. Next. So for the ones who have not been to Shanghai or not even to SNIEC, that is just a bird view of our venue, a classical triangle form, which allows short ways between the halls, 300,000 square meter. One of my favorite picture, well, I have to admit, maybe the blue sky is a little bit Photoshop, but okay, you know, promotion is part of our business. As you may know, that air quality in China is not the best. However, we also realized that during the corona last year and early this year, air quality indexes almost all over the country, also in big cities like Shanghai, improved quite a lot. Well, that is definitely mainly due to lack of production and lack of traveling last year. This year, and I'm already traveling quite a lot inside China, I can tell you the train stations, the roads and the airports are almost on the same level as 2019. Next. And that picture I took myself from a flight recently. If you're lucky sitting on the right side, and I normally as a frequent traveler, I know where I should sit. And if there are no clouds, you can have a beautiful picture of our venue of SNIEC, showing the, how to say, the strategical design of a triangle in the middle of the city. Next. Quick history update. We were founded in 2001. The chart only shows 2002 because 2001 was October, so almost the last quarter. We actually have this year our 20 years celebration, which we will do in November. But these charts show you very clearly the number of shows and the sold space, starting long time ago, 20 years ago, with just maybe 40 shows and selling below 1 million square meters. In 2019, before Corona, we had our record year with 7.3 million square meters and over 130 shows, almost 140 shows. B2B shows, I must say, because besides B2B, we also started our MICE, our B2C, our festival, our corporate business unit, which is also successful, but not the topic of today. Well, and then 2020, a big drop. However, and that is something quite interesting, after the pandemic happened here in China in February last year, we spent 3 or 4 months of intensive work with government officials, with police, with health bureau, with fire bureau, with environmental protection bureau, with the governor itself, to create, and of course with the organizers, to create a safety protocol, to create a safety plan, which hopefully would allow us to open one day. Because we all remember 1 year ago, it's almost more than 1 year, 1 year, 3 months, that time we really did not know when we can reopen. And the ones who experienced SARS in 2002, like me, living that time actually in Guangzhou and Hong Kong, in the middle of the SARS outbreak, that time the whole story was over in 3 months. So we were hoping the same happens with Corona. It did not. So luckily, the government approved our efforts. We did a lot of lobbying, and that's something all of us, all of you should do also in your hometowns, in your countries, organizers, exhibitors, associations, to convince the government how important our industry, the exhibition industry, is for the city, for the region, and for the city and for the country you are active in, either as a venue or as an organizer. So the safety protocols we developed started from last year, end of June, and our first show was a Semicon, and they maintain until today. And last word for this chart, we even succeeded to make a relatively good profit, although half of the year was lost. And you can imagine a big venue like SNIEC with over 300,000 square meter, even there's no show, the maintenance costs every month are very high. Next. Just show you a little bit what kind of exhibitions we have. Of course, we have traditional B2B, we have construction, machinery, furniture. We even have downright, we even have like China Joy, like entertainment, online game, B2B shows, not B2C. Even a China Joy, an online Comic-Con, easily have 50, 60,000 square meters. Next. And as I mentioned just before, we also focus on special events, festival, music concerts, presentation, corporate annual dinners, wedding, product launches, and so on. Here are just a couple of examples. We even once held the tennis ATP Masters in Shanghai. Next. So allow me now to talk a bit more and sharing more information how we succeeded here in SNIEC to survive the pandemic. And you remember my words from the beginning. Unfortunately, it's not totally over. And the new variants we have seen in South China are hopefully also working with the vaccinations, which we will receive. But this we never know. So for me, it's not after the pandemic. We are still partly in it. So what we have done, the stakeholders contact and relation and work with everybody, even on a daily basis, is extremely important. And after we developed the safety protocols, what I mentioned before, it was then time to think, how can we implement that and what kind of technology or equipment we need. So for example, I mentioned that here, we had to invest quite heavily in equipment, in this case infrared and face recognition, to be able to trace all the visitors. And remember, we are we are a big venue, so mass control. We are not talking about a conference with 500 people. We even had shows like the CBE, the China Beauty, just last month with 120,000 visitors. So roughly 40, 50,000 visitors per day plus exhibitors. That requires mass control. And for this, we invested, for example, in infrared checking stations. We have 3 big entrances here. So we bought almost 80 units and spent quite a lot of money to be able to let people in within 1 minute, up to 180, 200 people. That means the technology, the system you're using must be able to track and trace people with, in this case, high temperature. As you may know, if the temperature is above 37.3%, such system can isolate, can identify such persons. And we also did, or based on the requirement from government, we did set up in every entrance and control point a special area where such people with higher temperature would be isolated. The protocol requires that immediately we would call a special ambulance, and then these people would come in the moon suits with a big white cover face protection and would then make a double check on these people. And if temperature is still high, they would be brought to a special hospital. Last year, we opened in June, and from June to December, we had 88 shows, 3.5 million visitors. We had 3 cases of higher temperature, and luckily the 3 cases were just a normal flu or a normal fever. Nobody had corona. Next. The situation after reopening, I just mentioned Semicon was the first in last year, and surprisingly, coincidentally, also this year, after March, the Semicon was again the first show to start the season. But let me go one step back. Even in February, 1 week after the Chinese New Year, we were probably the first venue in the world to reopen, and we had the GSMA, or the World Mobile Congress, which is a telecommunication exhibition, B2B, but partly B2C. And because 2 days before that exhibition, we had, I don't want to say an outbreak, but we had 2 or 3 cases from an area in Shanghai, which were obviously brought from a customs warehouse, from a wife, which probably got it from her husband. And these people were playing Mahjong. I'm sure you all know Mahjong, in a restaurant somewhere in Shanghai area. So to be honest, how these people are tracked, to me, that's still a mystery. I think government is using high technology here to identify infection streams, and they can trace back where these come from. So these 3 people, later it was 8, were isolated. Again, a whole part of Shanghai was really blocked. I think 200,000, 250,000 people, including a 5-star hotel. And after everybody was tested and isolated, we luckily got the good news. Okay, Michael, you can continue with the show, but we had to set up PCR testing units in SNIEC, which was done basically overnight. So people from other provinces were nervous. They were not sure, could they come or not to Shanghai? And then we, again, overnight set up, with a big support from government, these testing centers. So everybody from risky areas back in February, or even low risk areas, had to make a test. Within 12 hours, the result was there. And then the next day, or if they came early the same day, they could still enter the exhibition. So let me jump a little bit, because I already have only 5 minutes left. It's actually very exciting. I could share maybe 2 or 3 more hours with you, but let me focus and stay in the 20 minutes. Just roughly that in last year, we reached a little bit above 50% of our budget. 21 looks promising. I can tell you, even the latest small outbreak in South China, most of the 2021 shows are almost the same level like 19. Some shows are even 5% higher than 19. So that shows that, and this is a very important part, the exhibitors, the visitors, and the organizers, they have trust that, in this case, SNIEC, Shanghai is a safe place. And also in other areas of China, I know that the exhibition venues and the shows are quite successful. So to maintain and to keep the protocols is extremely important. Next. So we all know the general situation in the rest of the world. If we talk about Europe, like my German shareholders, as you probably know, Düsseldorf, Hanover, Munich, They are closed for almost a year. In between, they reopened, but then there were new incidents and they had to close again. The latest news is that September 1, maybe they can have some shows like the IAA, which is the automotive show, which was won by Munich, should be opened. But then again, we all don't know what the situation will be in Europe or America. Why I say it like this, I have the feeling, and I'm here in China as a foreigner, that everybody in China, including us foreigners, is strictly following the instructions by government. Will it be wearing face mask or will it be going through temperature check and so on? In the West, or let's say in Europe, I know from even close friends, not only from business, a lot of people are ignoring such instructions by their local government. So for me, that's especially wearing a face mask on an exhibition is one of the main factors why I think here in China, we are almost back to normal. And I mentioned that here, some numbers from UFI. We all know that if we cannot go back to normal, the economic loss will be massive. And the numbers you can see here, worldwide, 180 billion US dollars lost and 1.9 million jobs lost. We all don't want that. Next. So what are the targets? I think the targets, as I mentioned also briefly, if there's no trust from the audience, from the visitors, from the organizers to come back, nobody will come. So we are working on a daily basis. We have daily to remind our team, my safety team, even already for almost a year, we reopened. Every day we must strictly follow protocols. Don't get lazy, use the daily routines, don't get tired. So we are also rotating people from different positions. Otherwise they do the same thing every day. 5-6 years ago, when we had a strategy of improving our service and it was successful. Nowadays, and I put this here as a 3S, in the old days, the 3S strategy was service, service, service. It's still the same today, but the S is replaced by safety, because the safety is one of the most important, if not the most important topic to help all of our industry to win the trust from the government, to allow us to reopen, to give us the licenses, and to let our audience, our exhibitors, our customers join. So the targets are including training of the staff, training even of the visitors. So outside our venue, we are having every 5 meters or 10 meters, big posts explaining in Chinese, here English, the protocols, what you have to do, what you have to scan, and so on. So training, education, repetition, and of course, to lobby the decision makers, in most cases, the government, to help us, our industry, to reopen. Next. So face-to-face, nothing can replace face-to-face. As I told Marisa, and unfortunately, Marisa, we don't have enough time, otherwise I would sing for you. I really wrote last year that song, and it's you can see it on YouTube. Check for face-to-face Michael or Sneak Exhibition Industry. That song is on YouTube. And the idea was really to focus on what is most important for us, and that's meeting on the floor ground, seeing each other in the eye, even with a face mask. I think that's okay for the time being, but we do not want to sit in front of the computer for the rest of our lives. We were not born for that. We are face to face, and this is what I want to remind all of us, that that is what we should do in all our companies, in all our venues, and for all shows we have. Don't forget and don't ignore the digital part. It's already happening. Even before Corona, we had digital experiences. I personally believe that digital will be and can be a part of our industry, but I would not bet on my money. I think it will remain on a maybe 10% part. My time is exactly up 20 minutes. You can hear the alarm. And that's all from my side. Thank you very much for your attention. And I'm very happy being able to share my experience with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Michael. We have very strict timekeepers, you know. We thank you for the China update, and we thank you for the exhibition stories. Time is too short for your exciting stories, but we will have a panel discussion later on, and we can hear more of you from at that time. Okay,
Okay,
so
thank you.
thank you again. And one more thing, we're not giving up on the face-to-face exhibition. All the more, we're not giving up on the face-to-face song. Okay, so we look
Okay.
forward to that.
Okay.
Okay, and now we move on to Japan. It would be interesting to listen to our counterpart in Japan. How did our exhibition counterparts there face the COVID-19 challenge? What was the difficult part in reopening exhibitions? What about exhibitors' participation? How did we keep visitors from staying at home and attend exhibitions? Our next speaker worked as a show coordinator at the Mesago Japan Corporation. It's also called Messe Frankfurt Japan Company Limited, Japan Limited. That was in 1998. And in 2003, he had the opportunity to work at the Birth Convention Exhibition Center. Fate had it and brought him back to his old love, which is Messe Frankfurt Japan Limited in 2006. And he stayed from that time to present time as he never left. So he's still there. He was former vice chairman and currently member of the board of directors of JEXA, Japan Exhibition Association. Our next speaker is very serious about his craft. His craft meaning trade shows, exhibitions. But let us not forget our speaker, our guest speaker, has a fun side also to him, which very few know about it. He loves food. He loves sushi. He also loves, he's a daring person, I would say, daring and adventurous. Why? Because he loves to ride the motorcycle. He owns one. Now, for most enthusiasts, motorcycle is freedom. Ladies and gentlemen, my privilege to introduce to you a sushi lover, a motorcycle rider, Kai or Yashushi-san to friends, and the managing director of Messe Frankfurt Japan Limited. Let us hear from Mr. Yasushi Kajiwara. Kajiwara-san, please.
Thank you, Marisa, for your nice introduction. So good afternoon or good evening to all events industry friends and colleagues in the world. So my name is Yasushi Kajiwara. My name is sounds Japanese, so it's easier to remember my name, Ya plus sushi. So Yasushi, it's easy. So sushi is my favorite food anyway. So I joined the exhibition industry in 1998. So now I have over 20 years of experience. So I have to realize myself is no longer a young guy. I thought I was a bit younger. We, Messe Frankfurt Japan in Tokyo, organize 10 events a year. But last year, we had to cancel 5 of our events. But we were lucky because we were still able to organize 5 of the events. So every time we got back from the show, we take the test, PCR test. So I have had over 10 times PCR test. And luckily, I got all negatives. So hopefully I keep negative until I get vaccinated. So it's my first time to join AFECA event as a speaker. So I hope I enjoy today, and hopefully I share my experience and then learn from you guys. So thank you. So I now share my slides with you. Okay, I have 4 main agenda items today. I will start with the general COVID-19 situation in Japan, including cases, vaccinations, and government supports. Then I will talk about the local events industry situation. I will also talk about the safety and hygiene guidelines published by the JEXA, Japan Exhibition Association, followed by post-COVID trends for the exhibition industry in Japan. Okay, let's start with the general COVID-19 situation. As many of you probably know, the COVID-19 situation in Northeast Asia has been better than other regions such as Europe and Americas. However, the situation in Japan has not been as good as neighboring countries such as China and South Korea. So it may not be easy to see on the screen, but this is the chart of the daily confirmed COVID-19 cases of some countries and areas. We have about 3,500 new cases a day on average these days, and the government tries to at least keep this level and accelerate the vaccination in order to achieve the herd immunity as soon as possible. We have had the state of emergency for 3 times in Japan, and the third emergency is expected to be lifted on the 20th of June. Japan's emergency is not as strict as it is in other countries like China, and basically it is based on a request basis. Currently, most shops are open, and only a small number of large shops are closed. Restaurants, bars are also open till 8 p.m., but they cannot serve alcohols. Most office workers go to the office every day. Less people work on remote compared to last year. Our offices, for example, fully open, and all workers come to the office every day this year, while we had 3 days a week at the office and 2 days on remote last year. Vaccination. The vaccination in Japan started on the 17th of February, and now elderly people, 65 years or older, have been being vaccinated. On the other hand, the US, UK, and some other countries with fast vaccinations show the big drop of COVID-19 cases, and Japanese locals are a little bit frustrated by the slow vaccinations here. As you see, the UK, US, and Germany are all far ahead of us, and the countries with high vaccination share show some signs of economic recovery. Our government tries to accelerate the vaccination by setting up large vaccination centers in major cities. So the vaccination centers in Tokyo and Osaka have just started the operation and expect to boost the vaccination. I do not yet know when I get the vaccination, but I hope I get my first one by the end of summer. So the Olympics and Paralympics. So I have to talk a little bit about this because this is a very, very hot topic here at the moment. According to some media reports, over 50% of locals are against hosting the Olympic Games this year, as they think the risk of spreading the COVID-19 is too high. The events industries worry if the Olympics and the Paralympics are canceled, it will negatively impact on the event industries. But I personally think it is too late to cancel, and the games are likely to be held. So the government supports. There are tens of supports by the central government and the local authorities available for business. Here are 2 major supports being used in the event industries, including ourselves. The first one is a financial aid for business closure. This is available to any business. If your company is partly or fully closed, the government supports for their personal expenses. The government support is by employee, and the maximum amount per person per day is 15,000 Japanese yen, which is equal to 136 US dollars. There was also a support for the office rent, but it was finished last year already. So the second scheme is a financial support for canceled events. If an event scheduled in the state of emergency period is canceled, the government support up to 25 million, which is equal to 227,000 US dollars to the canceled events for the costs incurred already. So this is available only for the canceled events within the emergency period. If your event is right after the emergency, for example, your event is not eligible to apply, even if it's canceled. So these government supports can really help the events industry to survive under the pandemic. Let's move on to the situation of the event industry. This is the exhibition status by country or area in Asia Pacific region published by UFI. I think many of you here have seen this one, at least. Japan is in the middle with all green, means exhibitions can be held without any restriction or with some minor restrictions. I would amend the status of Japan a little bit like this. But the overall situation in Japan has been quite good, as you see. So here are the records of restrictions of events. There were no events were held between 26th of February and 28th of July last year. The first exhibition held after the pandemic started 29th of July in Osaka. Events and exhibitions were reopened in September, and the number of events taking place increased in autumn. From January this year on, the events have been being held, but there are also some events canceled, postponed, or going online, depending on the COVID-19 situation. In coming July, the Olympics will start on the 23rd of July, followed by the Paralympics in August. This is the exhibition data comparison in Japan between 2020 and 2019. So we had 474 exhibitions in 2020, which is minus 38% from 2019. Exhibitor number dropped almost 65% compared to 2019. Exhibition square meter also reduced by 65%. Visitor number was dropped the most. Close to 80% decrease was recorded from previous year. Even though exhibitions were held, size was much smaller. Less than half exhibitors joined and had a huge drop of visitors recorded last year. Looks like figures for this year, it's to improve a little bit, but the growth is still small and have to wait till the situation improved a lot with vaccination. The biggest problem we had among organizers in Japan last year was the different cancellation policies by organizer. Company A, for example, has a free refund policy, and Company B partly refund, and C doesn't refund at all, etc., etc., to the exhibitors. Most exhibitors, of course, expected 100% refund, and then complained to the organizer by saying, "Oh, another company treated us better." As far as I know, many of the companies refunded 100% was because they didn't have the event cancellation refund policy for diseases like COVID-19. So they made the exhibitor happy, but I guess they had to ask their stand builders and other supporting companies a huge discount, or they had a liquidity problem if they made all the payments just by themselves. So some organizers, including ourselves, had a private meeting and shared the issues, and we shared the contracts with exhibitors and how they deal with exhibitors. So we realized that we needed to do this before. So let's move on to the safety and hygiene guidelines published by JEXA. The JEXA published the safety and hygiene guidelines for exhibitions. The guideline has been checked by the medical professionals appointed by the government, and the Cabinet Office COVID-19 department also checked it. It is available to all organizers for free and updated according to the situation. I don't talk about the too much details of the defined risks, but the main risks were droplet infection and between people and contact infections. So wearing a face mask is the most important measure for the protection, and all organizers have to make sure everyone in the exhibition halls to wear a face mask properly. So there are some other measures mentioned in the guideline shown here. So these are some findings after the shows. So face masks, as some of you may know, Japanese used to wearing a face mask even before COVID, so it was not a problem. So sanitization, it was also easy. We just place a hand sanitizer and people are willing to wash their hands and sanitize their hands frequently. So ventilation, large exhibition centers do not have this issue. So just keep AC on and keep shutters at the loading docks open. And social distance between people. Actually, Japanese do not shake hands or hug among Japanese. So we just bow. So we have less distance in the packed train, for example. So then we defined these risky scenes in the exhibitions and events. So basically, most people follow the guidelines and do really good at their booth. But they talk without a face mask in these situations. As you see, they have some things for their mouths, such as food, drink, and a cigarette. We also defined these not enough protection. And some exhibitions have exhibitors offering tasting. So this has to have extra care as visitors take the mask off. So the guidelines ask exhibitors to minimize the tasting and offering coffee, tea at the booth to reduce the risk. So organizers should check the exhibitors from time to time and they check if they properly follow the guideline. So this is a photo I took at one of the shows last year. So checking a face mask, hand sanitization, etc. at the entrance is important, but not enough. So we placed the security staffs carrying signs for wearing a face mask, wash hands, and etc. And they walk in the halls all the time and remind exhibitors, visitors to do that. So if they find a person without a face mask or not wearing the mask properly, the guard warned the person to wear the mask properly, etc. So keep reminding exhibitors and the visitors is the key to have the event safe. So we all know we cannot reduce the risk of infection to zero, but it is important to minimize the risk and inform all stakeholders about what you do to achieve this. So you should also send the message if there are no clusters. So first, keep organizing exhibitions safely. Then share your experiences and issues within the industry. So then keep sending the positive messages to potential exhibitors, visitors that exhibitions are safe. So exhibitors are basically cautious about participating in an exhibitions, and visitors are even more cautious than exhibitors. So keep sending the messages about what we do to prevent from the infection and the results of no clusters occurred. So both exhibitors and visitors will be back to your shows when you have a certain number of events without any clusters. So nowadays, digital event tools attract a lot of attention from organizers, exhibitors, and the visitors. Some of them are being widely used in the world already, and COVID-19 surely speeds up the digitization of the event industry. Here are post-COVID trends for exhibitions, and this is very subjective as my personal opinion. Opinion may differ depending on the situation too. So regarding virtual exhibition platform, I think human behavior is not as simple and structured as digital to do. It is not replaceable, as Michael mentioned earlier, with current technologies, but future could be different as digital develop quite fast. And digital matchmaking, getting more and more popular. We receive more requests from exhibitors, and we think we have to do it quite quickly. And webinar is already a common tool. Once we use it for a hybrid seminar, which has physical attendees with international speakers joining online, that was really good. So hybrid exhibition, it is also happening. This may be better for international exhibitors, but we have to see how it goes. So I talked quite quickly, but I hope that you can pick up something from my presentations, and that's it. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Kajiwara-san. They are very interesting updates from Japan's side, and questions are coming in for our speakers, and we will ask them later on during the panel discussion. Once again, Kajiwara-san, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is one of the pioneers in the exhibition industry in Singapore. I think most of us know him. I have known this gentleman since the 80s. I hope that doesn't date us. Singapore then was starting to be central place for exhibitions, just like Japan. Now, he was first elected president of the Singapore Association of Convention and Exhibition Organizers and Suppliers in 1981. This is SASIOS. A 3-term member of the board of directors of the International Association of Exhibition and Events, IAEE, based in Dallas, USA. He was also recipient of IAEE's Chairman's Award in 2002 and IMEX 2015 Excellence Award. He was inducted in the Halls of Leaders of the Events Industry Council of the United States. And to tell us about piloting trade show under pandemic situation, it is my honor to introduce to you the man dubbed by Singapore Straits Times as the exhibition man, the managing director of Conference and Exhibition Management Services, SEMS Private Limited. Let us all welcome Mr. Edward Liu. Edward, please.
Well, good evening to all our friends, both in Singapore, ASEAN, and beyond. Well, as the saying goes, they always save the best for last. So therefore, I will try and give you the best presentation for this webinar. Secondly, I would like to assure my friend, Mr. Kajiwara, that he's still very young as far as I'm concerned. He has spent 20 over years in the business, whereas I have spent a good 44 years only. I'm still going strong. So I'm still young as far as I'm concerned in the MICE industry.
It's good to know, Edward. Thank you.
But on a serious note, I would like to first of all thank AFECA, especially the president, Dato Vincent Lim, for giving me this opportunity to share my experience in piloting the trade show in Singapore under the current pandemic condition. Number two, I would also like to express my personal condolences to those who have lost friends or dear ones to the COVID-19. I have in mind, for example, Mr. S. Balasubramaniam, the president, the late president of the Indian Exhibition Industry Association, who passed on due to COVID-19. Indeed, he's a great loss to our industry, especially to our friends in India. And thirdly, I must, of course, join my president in wishing everyone a happy global exhibition day today. So I think this is a happy occasion. We should all be celebrating after this webinar. So with that, I shall now share my screen. Okay, I think what you have heard from Michael Krupa and Kajivara-san is that they have given you a big picture of how the COVID-19 pandemic have affected the exhibition industry in China, in Shanghai in particular, as well as in Japan. They have given you a macro view of things. As far as I'm concerned now, I will be rather micro in my presentation. I will be sharing with you our experience in organizing the Architecture and Building Services event 2021 as a pilot. Let me stress, it's a pilot hybrid exhibition under the pandemic condition. So let me see. In my presentation, I shall be talking about a little bit about how COVID has affected us in Singapore and how we have handled it, especially by the government. Then I'll move on to define our ABS as a pilot event and how we are recruiting exhibitors as well as visitors to our ABS 2021. At the same time, I will also like to highlight some of the innovation being done here in Singapore, especially with the construction of a facility called Connect at Changi. Okay, so and also I will share with you some of the safe management measures, how we have to introduce some of these measures in order to ensure, okay, that no untoward incident will happen at our trade show. So therefore, to start off with a short preamble, we are all aware, as we have heard from the World Health Organization, that as at the 16th of May, that was the last time I checked on its website, a total of 162 million people had COVID-19 infection, of which 3,364,000 people have died, unfortunately. So therefore, since the outbreak of this virus in January this year, we have heard from Michael, we have heard from Kajivara-san, that trade shows continue to be held in those countries, including, for example, in South Korea. So they were very, very brave in allowing these events to be held. But I must say that the bulk of event organizers have decided to cancel or postpone their events, most of them to the last quarter of this year, as highlighted by Kajivara-san. Similarly, for my company, I have moved all my three clusters of event to the last quarter of this year. Secondly, in Singapore, just a brief background on how the government has tackled the COVID-19 situation. Since the 28th of December this year, the Singapore government has already rolled out the mass vaccination program with the Pfizer biotech vaccine. Okay, obviously, as is done everywhere else, the frontliners, the healthcare, the port workers, even the transport workers, the taxi drivers, they were all given first right or priority in vaccination. Okay, right now in Singapore, the whole country is now being offered the opportunity for vaccination, okay, including our children, including our students from 12 years and above. They are also allowed to have the vaccination from the middle of this month. In fact, according to our Prime Minister who spoke on Monday, by August the 9th of August, the National Day of Singapore, practically every eligible Singaporeans and citizens would have been given at least one jab. Okay, so therefore, we are hopeful that by August or September, some form of herd immunity could be developed in Singapore. We can only hope and pray that this will be the case. Fortunately for myself, I have had my 2 jabs by last month. So I'm quite ready to go all out to run all our exhibition here in Singapore. So with the rolling out of the global vaccination program in the US in particular, in Europe, I think people being immunized far exceed the number of people that have been infected since February. But unfortunately for us, there has been now a new variant circulating and penetrating the various barriers that we have all tried to put up. So the situation, unfortunately, is a little worrisome for some countries. And to be honest, as a consequence of this new virus that have also hit Singapore in the last 2-3 weeks, our ABS event have also to be postponed from June, July till November this year. So we are one of the victims of the latest spike of coronavirus cases in our community. But notwithstanding that, the Singapore government has been very careful in calibrating the vaccination program, so much so that in the last quarter of 2020, last year, they decided, the government multi-ministry task force decided to allow a number of MICE events to be piloted under the what we call the Safe Business Events framework, as well as the Safe Management Measures, SMM protocols. Now, both these framework and protocols were actually developed by a task force comprising SASIOS, Singapore Tourism Board, and Enterprise Singapore. The 3 of them developed what they call the IRR, the Industry Resilience Roadmap, okay, which give a complete guideline to how we could safely manage our events. And thanks to this IIR, that's why the Singapore government has allowed us to organize our ABS 2021 as a pilot event. So let me deep dive into it now. So what we were approved, as I said, as a pilot event, and basically we would be the largest event to be approved with up to 2,500 participants. And I will elaborate how we have that numbers, okay? But to some extent, our ABS was meant to be a prelude to the World Economic Forum. It was originally scheduled in Singapore on the 17th to the 20th of August. Unfortunately, due to the spike in number of cases in the community, as I said, the WEF has since been cancelled. Okay. So what do we mean by a pilot exhibition in the Singapore context? Okay, let me qualify by saying that I'm looking at it from our Singapore perspective. All right. Our pilot event would comprise primarily of less than 100 local or Singapore-owned, foreign-owned companies that operate here in Singapore. Okay, that is the first qualification or definition. Now, so with that as a form of constraint that we have only to mobilize Singapore-based companies, but we decided that we will proceed with this piloting. Okay, why? Because here in Singapore, we have 138,000 registered private and public companies, including more than 7,000 multinational companies. Now, these MNCs have their regional headquarters in Singapore. They have financial and purchasing functions. Okay, so therefore, we could certainly recruit these local as well as foreign companies to participate in our exhibition. On the other hand, we could also recruit foreign exhibitors. Okay, now many of the foreign companies, obviously, either they have local offices or they have local representation. So we are also approaching many of these foreign-owned companies that operate out of Singapore. Okay, well, for these foreign companies, this is where the innovation by the Singapore government comes in. We have created, the Singapore government, together with various stakeholders, have developed and established what they call the Connect at Changi facility. So this facility is actually located right in the heart of the Singapore Expo, and it was opened in February this year. So basically, 3 of the exhibition halls, comprising 30,000 square meters, have been converted into a 4-star hotel accommodation, and is being managed by the Escort Hospitality Group. And this Connect at Changi has a total of 150 premium guest rooms, costing no more than $300. So it's a very good price, okay, where you are provided with 3 meals a day and all the use of all the Wi-Fi and so on and so forth. There are a total of 40 meeting rooms that can accommodate various meeting sizes from 4 people to 22 people. So the feature of this Connect at Changi is that you can make use of all these meeting rooms to meet with your clients based in Singapore if you are coming from abroad. Except that in that particular meeting room, there will also be a plexiglass between you so that you will not be able to, to really shake hands and so forth. But suffice to say that you could communicate with each other, obviously with the aid of the speaker devices that are within the rooms. So now, looking at in Singapore context, we have not been able to travel out of the country for more than 1 year now, right? Most of us, okay? And therefore, most of us are rather considered as negative or free of coronavirus, especially those who have already been vaccinated, all right? So therefore, we are targeting at all our Singaporeans and long-term residents to participate in our conferences as delegates and to visit our exhibition, okay, under, as I said, under the SMM protocol, all right? But the total number of participants would be limited to 2,500, comprising 200 exhibition personnel. Don't forget, I mentioned earlier, we are only targeting at 100 exhibitors. So assuming each exhibitor would have 2 staff to man the physical booth, okay, per booth. So that's already 200 packs. We will have about 30 of my staff running, coordinating the entire exercise, the event. And with a total of 10, we have 10 major conferences, and we are expecting about 1,800 conference delegates to attend these 10 conferences over the 3 days, okay, in 3 separate rooms. And these 1,800 conference delegates are also expected to visit our trade show, okay, to visit the trade show. But over and above this 1,800, we will also be inviting another 450 independent trade visitors. So if you add up all the numbers, they will come up to about 2,500 person or participants for our pilot event. Now, what about foreign attendees? Do we allow them to come in? My answer is yes. If they come from green lane countries, okay, where there is a protocol between Singapore and the respective countries, such as Brunei, such as Australia, New Zealand, okay, and we have always been talking about creating a travel bubble between Singapore and Hong Kong. So ultimately, those countries that have green lane arrangements with Singapore, they would be more than welcome to visit our show. And therefore, they have 2 choices. One is that they could come to Singapore, they could stay at Connect at Changi, or they could stay in a hotel. But upon arrival, everyone will have got to be tested for COVID-19, okay? Everyone will have to undergo tests on arrival and throughout your stay in Singapore, okay? Now, so very briefly, I just run through, these are some of our shows. The new dates of our ABS is now 24th to the 6th of November this year, okay? And it comprises Arc Expo, facilities management, lighting, as well as safety and security, fire and disaster Asia, and workplace Asia, WorkSafe Asia. I mentioned we will have 10 conferences, and these are the conferences. We have Young ASEAN Architects, the International FM Conference, the ACES Security Conference on the first day. Second day, we have a Design Asia Congress, the Real Estate Developers IDD Symposium, and what we call the Wish Council of Singapore, organizing an FM forum for safety and security personnel. And on the last day, the United Architects of the Philippines will be doing the lecture series. The Singapore Industrial Automation Association will be doing a technical seminar. And last but not least is outcome-based contracts security forum. So all in, we would have 7 exhibitions and 10 conferences to be held in person, physically at the Marina Bay Sands, right? Complementing it, as it is now the norm, we are also organizing the virtual show, okay? And our virtual edition will open at least 2 weeks prior to the 24th of November. Now, why are we opening earlier? This is to allow our global and local audience to have a preview of some of the exhibitors and their exhibits in order to facilitate more effective business communication, either online, virtually, or in person. As I said earlier, foreign visitors could also come to Singapore if they could stay at, as I said, Connect at Changi or at the hotel. In all, we are expecting 5,000 trade attendees or more to visit our ABS virtual presentation. Now, we have tried this, we have done a cafe show, and it turned out to be very successful. Hence, as mentioned by Kajivara-san, this is going to be the norm for us in organizing hybrid event. All right, so some of the pilot, some of the SMM protocol is that everyone visiting our show will have to undergo PET, pre-event testing, with antigen rapid testing, taking of temperature, obviously, social distancing. And for the conferences, we will be organizing them into cohorts of 50 people. There will be no intermingling of the delegates amongst these cohorts. But, well, you have already 49 other people to interact with, okay? So that is the arrangement we are doing. Now, as far as the exhibition is concerned, the attendees are also to be divided into cohorts of 50, but we will have about at least 5 zones. So every zone will be able to take 50 people, and therefore, theoretically, we could take up to 250 people at any one time in the exhibition hall, okay? But each of these groups, you are given a time band of 2 hours to visit the show, all right? There's also no intermingling, and you are not allowed to engage the exhibitors for more than 15 minutes. If you want to have a longer conversation, we will have to request you to conduct your meeting at what we call meeting pods. We will create meeting rooms, okay, for you to have longer meetings with your customers. Okay, now for those of us who have been jabbed, originally you will be exempted from testing. However, in the light of new scientific evidence that even those who have been jabbed are not immune to infection, so we are having to relook at this new condition. All right. All right. In conclusion, is that we are organizing our ABS's pilot events at the Marina Bay Sands, as I said, with the approval from the multi-ministry task force represented by the Singapore Tourism Board, as well as the Enterprise Singapore, both under the Ministry of Trade and Industry. Provided, of course, we will have to operate under the Safe Business event, where certain limitations, as I mentioned earlier, as well as the SMM protocol. However, while organizing of our show is primarily to allow our exhibitors, Singapore-based companies, to conduct business, to create business opportunities for themselves. But more importantly is that we were working closely with the Singapore Tourism Board to test out some of these SMM protocol to ensure that they are practical, feasible to hold large-scale events under the current pandemic conditions. So if we succeed, which I have no doubt that we will more than succeed, Singapore therefore is safe to hold more large-scale events, okay? So with that, I will conclude my presentation, and I'll be happy to answer any more questions that you may have. Thank you. Thank you for your attention. Back to you, Marisa.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Edward. We appreciate your updates on Singapore, your protocols, and we appreciate also your efforts sharing with us your efforts on putting together this huge task of the pilot hybrid exhibition, which is the ADS 2021. Now, to all our speakers, Michael, Yasushi-san, and Edward, we thank you for sharing your stories with us. And happy to know, we're not happy about the COVID, but we're happy that we reconfirmed we are not alone in these difficult times. What you have done so far inspires us all. Now we come to the most interesting part of the forum, the questions and more questions portion. Our speakers are more than willing to answer whatever you have in mind. Just shoot the questions here in the chat group, let them come. So the harder the questions, the better for us, the better for our speaker, okay? So here's the first question that we received. This is from Chea Y Hong. Hi, Chea. This is for Michael. Michael, are there many foreign exhibitors or visitors to the trade shows in SNIC?
Okay, so the rough estimation in the last years is that roughly 95% are Chinese and 5% foreigners, including Hong Kong, Taiwan, and even Macau. Now, of course, we are seeing not 5% of non-Chinese here. However, what is interesting that the number of visitors to our shows is just around 10% down. So it's not as massive as expected. The reason for that is that a lot of international companies have already for many years local offices, production sites, or representatives, and even the local companies have foreigners as staff. So if in the old days, the sales director from Sao Paulo, New York, Frankfurt, Paris, Tokyo was coming to SNIEC, so a foreign face, you may even have the same company sending a foreign director who's already based in China. So that is one explanation why the total number of foreigners are not as drastically limited as you may think because of the close of the border.
Michael? Michael,
Yes.
can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
Michael, the 95% Chinese and 5% foreigner you mentioned, this is of what total figure? We're talking of, are we talking about the 3.5 million of 2020?
Well, that's basically, this figure is now based on last year, which is 3.5. This year is too early, but we are seeing the effect when or after the COVID happened. Correct.
Okay, thank you very much, Michael. Chea, you got your answer. Now we have another question. This is for Kajiwara-san from Albert Lafuente. Hi, Albert. Nice to see you here. Kajiwara-san, do you think that the Tokyo Olympics will go ahead as scheduled? And what will the impact be to Japan's MICE industry if it will be canceled at the last minute?
I think the event industry people think, you know, that if the Olympic is cancelled, it will have a big negative impact because the big sporting event is cancelled. So all mass gatherings have to be cancelled as well. So that's kind of a public opinion, you know, we may have if cancelled. So the industry will support the Olympics to be held as scheduled, and hopefully, you know, we get no clusters.
Okay, Albert, you got your answer. Thank you, Kajiwara-san. There is a question for Michael again from Rosalind Nang from Singapore, our Vice President for in AFECA. Are the infrared and face recognitions provided by your venue, FOC, free of cost, or chargeable to organizer? You mentioned earlier that SNIC invested in technology, infrared equipment, to address the present COVID situation. So we'd like to find out, is this part of your service to organizers, to venue users, or an incentive? And if yes, maybe you can expound on that, Michael.
Yeah, well, as you can imagine, it's a lot of investment, and the answer is yes. we are charging it to the organizers, but we are not passing 100%. We are passing an amount which is discussed case by case, show by show. So that's why I cannot give you any number here on that. That really depends how big is the show, how many exhibitors, visitors are expected, and so on. But yes, we are sharing.
Thank you very much, Michael. Ross, I hope you got your answer there. If not, you can just send another question, a follow-up, if you want more answers. Thank you, Ross. Now, this is a question for Edward. Edward, what is the status of the COVID situation in Singapore? Are MICE exhibitions now open, or it's still come and go depending on the numbers of Singapore? And if ever the ABS is set for the Q4 of this year, what will make it stop? Or is that a sure project for Singapore this 2021?
Thank you for that question. Well, first of all, no exhibition is currently allowed to be held in Singapore because of the current situation. And that's why I mentioned earlier, we were fairly lucky that the government has decided to allow us to pilot our project with up to 2,500 participants. That was under one of the scheme that the multi-ministry task force has for us. But unfortunately, because of the recent spike, we have to postpone to November. But your other part of the question is that the situation in Singapore, to me, is actually stabilizing. When we talk about a recent spike, we had more than, let's say, 30 local cases. And that was scary, more than 30. But right now, it has come down to less than 30, in fact, even less than 20 cases in the community. But so the government, in fact, as I said earlier, the Prime Minister has now announced a new strategy where they are going to have a faster testing of resident. If there is any suspect cases in any blocks or flats or in dormitory. Secondly, we have also introduced technology under what we call Trace Together and Safe Entry. And this technology allows the tracing of infected people and those that have come close to him or her, much faster tracing of people. And finally, the government is now going to roll out much faster with one jab of vaccination. Therefore, by National Day, everyone would have been given the opportunity for at least one jab. So overall, I'm very sanguine that things will definitely improve after the lifting of the current phase 2 heightened alert restriction, which will be lifted on Sunday, the 13th of June. Okay, and the last part of the question is, yes, we are confident that the situation will be able to improve to the extent of having some form of herd immunity. And I'm very confident that we will be able to do our ABS as one of the first events to be held in Singapore. I'm hoping to have more than 2,500 participants, maybe 3,000 or 4,000. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Edward. Thank you very much for the detailed answer. Now we have a question here for Kajiwara-san. Most of our audience now, part of the audience, would like to find out on how government can help them. How will they seek help, to make the MICE industry move? He says, Can you share again, or can you give us inputs on Japan's government's aid for canceled events, or for those events who'd like to organize in Japan?
Okay, I share my slides again. Where was it? Actually, our government is quite supportive to our industries to organize events, because it also have a big positive impacts on the economy as well. So even under the state of emergency, we were able to have some shows. And I think, oops, I think I've gone too far.
Yeah. Yes.
Yep. The second one is a financial aid for the event cancellation. I think most of the time, the organizers can organize the exhibitions, but depending on the industry or depending on the show, so has to cancel. So for those canceled events, usually, we have to pay for the venue rent and the labors and so on. So the government decided to support the event organizers. Actually, this event means including exhibitions, concert, and any event. So subsidized for the event cancellation is per event. So if you cancel 2 events, so you get the subsidy twice. So I think it's a great scheme, because the some organizers, are not willing to cancel the event because they already pay a lot of costs. So it's a great support. But I think it doesn't increase the number of event cancellation by that scheme, because the people tend to go out and shops are open, for example. So many people go out, and the exhibitors sort of think that we need a business face to face. So if we go to the exhibition centers, a lot of shows are already being held. So I think that it's just a matter of time that people want to go to the exhibition center more and more. And vaccination is in progress. I think that we have the herd immunity not too far in the future. Am I answering to the question?
Yes, and I think they need more, they want to discuss more with you, Kajiwara-san. So I think from the discussions earlier, government support, partnership with government is a very interesting topic, and maybe we can schedule another webinar series on that. We're just starting here in AFECA, which is episode 1 on this part that we're doing now, and maybe we're coming up with other series to answer questions and address concerns about the COVID-19. Now, there's another question for Edward here. Edward, I have 2 questions. One is from Mr. Chiruit Isangrun Ayutaya. Thank you very much, Edward. It is very impressive. My question is, how do you charge exhibitors? And following that, from Lloyd Jun Hao. Hi, Edward. Your show is in MBS Connect at Changi facility is in Singapore Expo. How do you work this out?
Okay, let me answer the second one first.
Okay.
The Connect at Changi facility is run independently by a consortium of stakeholders, okay, led by the Temasek Group, the government sovereign fund, plus a lot of other partners. As I said, I mentioned the Escort Hotel Group and so on. Of course, because the venue is at Singapore Expo, Spheres SingX is also involved. But it will operate independently as a facility, as a unique facility, okay? So it does not matter it is not exactly part of SingX per se, but is an independent facility. So I saw a question earlier, is that the foreign exhibitors, should they come and participate in our show, if they choose to stay in that facility, they will not be allowed to visit the exhibition. But the foreign visitors or local visitors can visit them at the facility, okay, at the facility to have business discussion, okay? So this is the second question that I answer first. The first question is, how do I charge? Well, our rates are published rates, $600 over per square meter, blah, blah, blah. It's all available in our website, okay? So, of course, our virtual show is cheaper, okay? But the good thing, as what Kajivara-san has mentioned, we are also thankful to our government for giving us strong support. Insofar as exhibitions are concerned, as you may know, the Enterprise Singapore provides subsidy under what they call the IFM lead program, IFM, okay, where Singapore companies with more than 30% local equity can enjoy up to 70% of the cost of participation, okay? Also, we have the virtual show, don't forget, they are also entitled to subsidy should they take part in our virtual show, which is only less than $3,000 per booth. And of course, there are a lot of features, but I shan't take up too much time. Okay? Check us out. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Edward. Thank you very much. There's another question for Michael. Michael from Ainin Dar. How do your exhibitors feel about the safety measures that you're implementing at your exhibitions during your show days? Are they reacting negatively, or they're happy about it, or they want you to be more strict with them? So how do you assess the reactions of the exhibitors?
Well, honestly, really honestly, I have not heard even one complaint about any exhibitor about the tough measurements or relatively tough measurements with the safety protocol. Everybody understands. So that's easy to answer. What, of course, exhibitors, organizers indirectly not happy is the additional cost due to COVID control safety protocols, but that's a similar question come up earlier. There is no way a venue, for example, or only an organizer can share that. That's something the supply chain somehow have to share. How to share? Well, that's a different story. So logically, if you are asked as an exhibitor, even a visitor, from tomorrow you have to pay some more money, of course you're not happy. But even these complaints about the costs were relatively on a moderate level. So here in SNIEC, people even more complaining about not getting a time slot because we are a relatively busy venue. That shows me that we are back to normal. The complaint about COVID measures or measurements is actually almost zero.
Thank you. That's good to hear, Michael. That's a positive sign for everyone. Now, there's a question from Andrew Binning. Andrew is from South Africa. He's very active in the BRICS group. Anyone can answer this. Anyone who'd like to answer this. Andrew is asking, do you think vaccinations are the only solution to us returning to a truly international trade show and MICE industry that is vaccinating 2/3 of the world population? So maybe Kajiwari-san, would you like to answer? Is vaccination the only solution to returning to an international level again of the trade show business?
Yeah, I think so. The vaccination is the most effective solution to the pandemic. And even though we have shows running in Japan, the most shows do not have international direct participants. So even before the COVID, shows in Japan rather regional compared to shows in Singapore, China. But after the COVID, we still have some international exhibitors, but those booths are basically supported and run by the distributors or partners, or the people who live in Japan at the moment. So yeah, it's if the show is more international and large scale, it's more difficult to get back to what it was before the COVID. So and the vaccination is a key.
Thank you, Kajiwara-san. What about Michael? What do you think? Is vaccination the only solution to returning to the being an international event, international show?
Well, it sounds like it could be. Still, we all know that it requires the coordination and mutual approval between countries and governments in different areas of the world. If that is not done, then vaccination here in China does not help me to travel outside and vice versa. It does not help a German guy to come to China. I think it's a combination of vaccination and other measures, but it's still the strongest one. Like, give you one example, in my case, I'm still not vaccinated because I called my German insurer and told him I plan to get vaccination. And then I asked him if anything happens, like consequent problems or whatever, are they insured? And my German insurer said, no, they're not insured. And that's one reason I did not do it, because who knows, maybe really something happens. And then, yeah, so that's why I'm waiting. But again, it's one of the biggest, it's probably the only chance we have globally to come back to normal.
Okay, thank you, Michael. We all know that travel restriction is a major factor that affects our international trade shows. Now, Susan Chi is asking, is Japan and Singapore allowing business travelers for conferences and meetings without mandatory 14 quarantine days?
Well,
Japan and Singapore. Maybe Edward, yes, go ahead.
Yeah,
Edward.
I understand that Singapore requires all travelers from countries that have got more cases to be quarantined upon arrival in Singapore for 14 days, apart from the vaccination, apart from the testing and so forth. Okay, that's my answer.
Kajiwara-san,
yes, I think it depends on the country, but the standard is, I think, we require a 10-day quarantine.
Okay. Edward, this is from Pravit of Thailand. Your ABS 2021 will limit time for visitors to stay in the show within 2 hours or 15 minutes in the exhibitor's booth. How can you control them to adhere to time limitations?
Well, very good question.
Yeah, to monitor closely and assign a lot of guys to monitor the booth.
Absolutely. Well, I think, to be honest, here we in Singapore, and for my company as well, we have to place the health and safety of all participants as our priority. Okay, so under the current situation, okay, prior to the recent height, that was our plan to register our trade visitors and to escort them into the exhibition hall in groups of 50. And they would be able to move around the hall in groups of 50 into the 5 different zones. So therefore, in each zone, there are 50 people. We would be able to have 250 people for every 2 hours. Okay, so it's all controlled. We will have what we call the Safe Distancing Ambassador, SDA, both inside the zone and outside to escort them. But we want to make it less obtrusive. All right, we don't want to have complaints from people that we are really hurting them like sheep. But the fact of the matter is that we have to have a every 2 hours with these groups of people, because the next the next group of people would be coming in for the next 2 hours. And as I said earlier, unless things change by November, everyone got to be tested. And we will test everybody with the ART, okay? But we will bear the cost of all this testing. And each test can cost up to $50, okay? So, but we will bear the cost with the support of our Singapore Tourism Board.
Okay, thank you very much, Edward.
Yeah.
I think we're running out of time, but I have three more questions, if the gentleman will allow me. One is for Kajiwara-san and Michael. You can answer this question. Studies worldwide say that 70% of those who visit our virtual shows, those who visit our virtual shows only is at 70% of, 70% who visited virtual shows have never gone to physical exhibitions. Now, if we go physical, how can you convince this 70% to visit the physical shows?
Well, I'm not an organizer, I'm a venue, but I have discussed this over and over with most of the CEO just this morning with one of our biggest customers. There are two ways how to look at it. Number one, the digital or the online exhibition, as we call, the idea to replace the 3 or 4 days of show with an online exhibition, the chances that this will happen, if you ask me and most of my customers, are between 5 to 10%, if at all. The other way to look at digitally is, and that is more the question how we get the 70%, is to attract them not only during the physical show time, but to give them service before, during, and after the show, more like a platform. I think the critical question is, how long would that be? Some people are discussing a 365 model, so basically open for a show the whole year. I think that is nonsense. It's like a football game is 90 minutes. You cannot make visitors for 1 year. So I think the truth will be before the show, people are interested, let's say a week or a couple of days, during, okay, and maybe a week or 2 after, maybe maximum a month. So I think to attract these 70% there are 2 ways. Number one is make the online platform so good that they do not have to come. Well, that's not what I want, but that's maybe what the organizers helps. Or tell them the physical part is so exciting that you must come. So, but I, as a venue, I don't have the answer. Maybe ask Edward as an organizer or ask Kashiwa-san.
Okay, thank you very much. Kajiwara-san.
Yes, actually, we conducted a visitor survey to some of our key visitors for one of our shows. And because we heard from the exhibitors that, it's online is getting more common and common. So they were getting a little nervous if, the visitors are not coming to the show. But the results of the survey was quite interesting because the online works for, repeating orders. Actually, show was for the consumer goods, and they can place orders online for the products and services they already know. But if the product or service is new, they need to see because they have the customers behind them. So it's really important to see the actual product face to face and talk to the supplier face to face and the negotiate with prices and so on. So I think that the digital will exist, but I think the physical also exists depending on the industry though.
Okay, thank you very much, Kajiwara-san. And to wrap up everything, because we don't have time anymore, I would like to hear from all our speakers in 1 or 2 sentences. What can you advise us? What can you advise those who are waiting, preparing to open, and those who have just reopened? In 2 sentences, gentlemen. Can we start off with Edward?
Well, first of all, stay positive, okay? And curate good experience for both your exhibitors and trade visitors. In other words, service it's key to our customers. Thank you.
Kajiwara-san?
Yes, I think that communication is a key. So you should talk to your exhibitors and visitors, and also talk to your competitors and suppliers. If if we should organize a physical shows safely. So I think you can find some things and needs and wants from the communication.
Yes, Michael, your turn.
So we already open, as you know. So from my experience, I see that building the trust of the people who come to your show is the key. And to get that trust, you need local government and authorities body support. So lobbying, meeting more regularly to convince them that you as a show, as a venue, need guidelines to build their trust. And that works only by day-to-day do the lobby work with local government.
Thank you very much, Michael. There you are, ladies and gentlemen. We wish we have more time, but even beautiful things come to an end. Now, learnings and pieces of advice from our speakers are truly valuable, and let us remember them, and may they serve as inspiration to all of us. On behalf of our AFECA board, led by our president, Vincent Lim, we would like to acknowledge and thank the following for making this event possible. Our speakers, Michael Krupi, General Manager of Shanghai New International Expo Center; Yasushi Kajiwara, Managing Director of Nessie Frankfurt Japan Limited; Edward Liu, of course, Managing Director of SEMS; of course, and Wendy Lai, our AFECA webinar chairperson and our Secretary General of AFECA and Vice President of Global Sources. Thank you, Wendy. Bootprint, our virtual platform partner; Annie Yung, Jack Chan, sources of all our video materials; CIS Network, Malaysia; Nessie Frankfurt Japan; Shanghai New International Expo Center Company, and the Singapore Tourism Board. Of course, our AFECA Secretariat team, Joanne and Kaifang; Albert Banaag, Area General Manager of Microtel by Windham, Acropolis, and UP Techno Hub; and of course, our Manila production team, IT team, Arvin Logan and Nina Gilliargan. We thank everyone for joining us this afternoon until tonight. You stay safe, everyone. We'll see you in our next episode of this AFECA webinar. Bye, everyone. Thank you, guys. Thank you very much.